Shalom, shalom to everyone watching here on the Ways of Israel. And I'm going to continue our conversation or talk over the book, The Faith Strengthened, a Jewish Response to Missionary by Isaac Troki, in this incredible book that he wrote many years ago, responding to many of the queries and questions many Christians have regarding our scripture and their misconstruing of our scriptures. In Genesis chapter 49, verse 10, we read, no, I just started, how about that? Shalom, shalom, this is Rabbi Moshe Otero, and we're going to continue the study of Faith Strengthened, and we're going to look at the question, has Shiloh come, or Shilo? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall belong the gatherings of people. Now, the Christian argument from this verse that the patriarch Jacob did hereby prophesy of the coming of Jesus, whom he calls Jacob, also called Shilo, and through him, Jesus, the prophecy was fulfilled. For the scepter did not depart from the Jews until Jesus appeared, and with him only departed the royalty from the Jews. Now, the whole idea here is, after the first century, the royalty really didn't blossom. It really didn't come until Jesus came, and after Jesus came, oops, behold, there was no more royalty. Keep in mind, it's a problem in the rationale, because we know that for many years, even before Jesus, the monarchy already didn't have a position. In other words, this is one of the things that we read about in our literature, that because the Sadducees refused to establish or reestablish the monarchy, they brought themselves a very bad curse upon themselves, resulting of their elimination as a descendant. Talking about the Sadducees. The refutation, however, of the Christian labors under this misconception was that Jesus was a member of the tribe of Judah and king of the Jews. Now, with this interpretation, the true one, how can we reconcile it with the fact that the scepter did not depart from Judah at the advent of the so-called Shiloh? It's a question. We find that Judah lost sovereignty at the destruction of the first temple under Nebuchadnezzar, which was led by Zedekiah, king of Judah, into captivity, an event which happened 430 years before the birth of Jesus. During his existence of the second temple, we find no indication that a descendant of Judah governed Israel. As a matter of fact, we read that Herod and his descendant who occupied the throne until the fall of the second temple, and were of a low birth and therefore did not belong of the tribe of Judah. And even King Agrippa, who happened to be a convert to Judaism, lamented to the fact that he was a convert, and he was placed in power by the power of Rome, not the power of Israel, to be the king of the Jews over and by force. How can they therefore maintain the scepter had not departed from Judah, nor the royalty from Israel until the coming of Jesus, when even during the period of Jesus, no descendant of David ruled the throne? Investigating the true sense of the words, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, meaning the tribe of Judah, we perceive that the patriarch Jacob, by this blessing, bequeathed to Judah the supremacy over his brethren. According, he says in Genesis chapter 49, verse 8, the children of thy father shall bow down to thee. And on this account, he compares them with a lion as a king among the other animals. Hence, we find the tribe of Judah taking the precedence in the camps or the encampments. And Nashon, the prince of that tribe, was admitted on the first day of the dedication of tabernacle to offer up his sacrifice, the feast of dedication known as Hanukkah. Subsequently, when Joshua was dead, when he passed on, the Israelites inquired of the Lord, and we read that in chapter 1 of Judges, verse 1, who shall go up against the Canaanites first to fight against them? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up. These passages, it appears that after the leader had left the tribe with a successor, they inquired which should assume the rule and the precedency, and the Almighty awarded it to the tribe of Judah. 1 Chronicles chapter 5 verse 2, the most powerful among his brethren. The superiority may be ascribed to David, who is said of him in 1 Chronicles chapter 28 verse 4, the Lord chose me before the house of my fathers to be king over Israel forever. For he has chosen Judah to be the ruler, and the house of Judah the house of my father. Among the sons of my father will be willed to make me king over all of Israel. Notice it didn't say just a mere priest, but mere king. From David the royalty descended to Zedekiah, king of Judah, who was of the seed of David. With this king, this sovereignty departed from the tribe of Judah. There remained during the whole series of the two captivities only very few dignitaries as princes and chiefs of the captivities who have been denominated by the patriarch as lawgivers, mahokim, plural for lawgivers. In other words, one of the things that we see in the role of the king of Judah is that he's going to be a lawgiver. As a matter of fact, this is the reason why the faith of Moses, the teachings of the Mosaic law, today is called Judaism, because it derives from this concept that out of the tribe of Judah would be those who will basically give forward the law, teach the law. Teach the law of whom? The law of Moses. So thus we are called Judaism. During the existence of the Second Temple, and also at the time when the priests and their subordinates ruled, they were found princes descended from David and from the lineage of Zerubbabel, as it's stated in the work of Seder Nugalam Zuta. It is true that we find originally King Saul was elected ruler, though not descending from the tribe of Judah, but from the tribe of Benjamin. By the way, who do we remember who's of the tribe of Benjamin? We remember Mordecai, who himself said, Ani Yehudi. Interesting note. But that at that period it was against the desire of the Almighty to admit a king. On that account we would have a king chosen from the tribe to which the promise of permanent dynasty had been given. He had appointed for a king who should occupy the throne only for a short time. To this fact Scripture alludes to Hosea chapter 13 verse 11. I gave thee a king in mine anger, and I removed him in my wrath. For he said, and his children were slain, and the sway departed him. All of this misfortune came to pass because the Israelites had desired a king in the time of Samuel, the prophet of the Lord, who was their judge and leader. In other words, Shmuel was supposed to be not only their leader and their judge, but he was to act like a king for all of Israel. Hence we find in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 7, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me from ruling over them. Here we have that before, Shmuel basically gave judgment, led the people, and by them rejecting Shmuel, they rejected God's leadership over them, God's rulership over them, God's kingship over them. Till then, they actually had a prophet who was not only a judge but also leader for all of Israel. Upon them desiring a king like the other nations, they committed a big sin unto themselves. Upon Israel came this judgment, and God said, they didn't reject you, Shmuel. Don't take it personally. They did it to me. Yet even in the times of Samuel, the dignity of leadership was not totally removed from the tribe of Judah. For David was the man who conducted Israel to battle. Hence we must interpret the words, the scepter shall not depart from Judah. According to the literal sense, the scepter of royalty shall not be taken from Judah as long as the kingdom shall last. And the words, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, that the lawgiver shall not depart, has a reference to the sages and the scribes, who being from the seed of Judah were rulers and leaders. During the captivity, for the chief of the captivity, were descendants of David. For example, Daniel, who was led into captivity. All the stories about Daniel in the lion's den, all the stories about Daniel interpreting dreams, all the the powerful influence that Daniel had even over the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar, he was a descendant of David. For the chief of captivity were descendants of David, and the majority of exiles were from the tribe of Judah, and many of them were of the lineage of David. They distinguished themselves as scholars, theologians, sages, scribes, and therefore they were called lawgivers. The same manner as Moses was considered a lawgiver, the chief of prophets, and is called in Hebrew Mahokim, lawgiver, as it says in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 21. For there is the portion of the lawgiver concealed, and he led the heads of the people and executed the justice of the Lord and his judgments with Israel. And we'll see here also in Judges, from Nachir descended lawgivers, and from Zebulun those who handle the pen of the scribe, which refers again to the sages who were learned, who were the rulers of their people. The words from his feet are synonymous with the expression his seed. Shiloh signifies, pay attention now, please pay attention. Shiloh signifies the youngest child or the last child, and is derived from the same root, vikashlita, and towards her young one, as it says in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 57, which the Chaldee version renders it, and towards the youngest of her children. The term Shiloh refers to our expected king, the Messiah, who will appear in the latter days and will be one of the seeds of Judah. The words "until Shiloh comes" do not mean that at the coming of Shiloh the scepter shall immediately depart, as mistranslated by many Christians, but on the contrary, it shall be that it shall not depart thereafter. In other words, it will remain. The word od, until, is used in the same sense as in the following instances in Genesis chapter 28, verse 15. For I will not leave thee until I have done what I promised unto thee. And in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 24, no man shall be able to stand before thee until thou shalt have destroyed them. The word hukat means authority.